Music theory with Microsoft Excel. Scale degree chords versus modal chords. This time adding what looks like it's just icing on the cake, but no, it has as much richness, as much nutrients as the cake itself. It could be consumed in and of itself and be a whole meal. It's basically another layer, a double-decker cake that we have here, that being the color system. So get ready and some coffee, because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin', and you need Microsoft Excel for that. People always come up and say, we don't need, Excel's not a music thing. I'll tell you what, Excel is a music thing. In Excel, if you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay, because you could just follow along, possibly build in the part of the worksheet that we're currently working on. If you do have access to this workbook though, 5 tabs down below. We've got a very colorful fretboard tab. We have the example tab, in essence the answer key. We have 2 prior presentation tabs from which we will pull information as we work on our current tab, that being the blank tab, where we built this from a blank worksheet, building from scratch, but did so in a prior course or section, this time focusing on adding the layer of nuance, the color system, to our worksheet. Let's go on over to the fretboard to get a reminder of our overall objective, that being to use a color system in an optimal fashion to better understand music theory in general, to better create tools such as our fretboard, as we see here, where we have the low or heavy E string, the one closest to the ceiling on top. We're looking at the collection of 7 notes built off of the C major. And we have each fret that has been broken out into 2 halves. The first half being the point, that could be expressed by the note point, but oftentimes it's more useful to express it by the relative position, which would be the Nashville number point or the modal point. The second half then being the distance, and the distance could be expressed in modal distance or the intervals. As we think about this second point, we have to express it in relation to, or from the vantage point, the perspective of one of the 7 notes in the 7-note collection. So if I change this, if I toggle this to an I for the Ionian, you can see now the C has a perfect first next to it. But if I was to change the perspective to that of the Aeolian, then now we have the Aeolian has the perfect first next to it. For our color coding system, similarly, we want to be able to name everything just by color. This is what I mean by saying this is not just icing on the cake. This is not just a color association type of thing. It's actually a whole system in and of itself. You can basically remove all the names and name everything by color, both point as well as distance. Now, obviously, you would have a new name. The name would be the color name, but that's the idea. So it's a very in-depth system if we keep everything static, that being the point expressed as either a color per point, or more useful oftentimes, like the Nashville number system, a permanent color for the modal or nodal points, or the Nashville numbers. And then the second one is going to provide us with a color system tied to the distances, and that will be the interval distances. That way, then, I can name everything as I move, say, from an A to, or let's say the Aeolian node to the Locrian node. I can name the distance, saying I'm going to the red to the yellow note, and the distance could be named by the chartreuse color. So that's going to be the idea. So let's go on over to the blank tab, and we're going to add our color system here to what we have built with the chord system. So on the chord system, we remember that the chord system has a problem typically with the normal naming convention, that being that if we group everything together, let's go to this thing on the right, you get a chord system that looks something like this for all of the chords that can be constructed from the notes in any one particular collection of notes. The problem is that it doesn't really tell you which of the types of chords that you should be applying to each of the points. Normally, we're going to tie to it or add to it the letters, but the letter names don't tell you the relative position within any of the collections of notes. So you kind of have to figure out from this chord chart which of the nodes that I'm on, what kind of chord am I going to build from it. Now it's nice that we saw in a prior course or section where we break it out by node, right? So I don't care which of the 12 collections of 7 notes I'm in, there's going to be an Ionian node, and I can, in essence, build a chord, whether it be a 3-note chord to a 7-note chord, like this, that would be in this category. If I'm on the Locrian node, then you have the same naming construction for the 3, but then you have to add this extension because the Locrian mode gets out of whack with the augmented 4th, which is same as the 11, right? And then the Mixolydian gets out of whack. You have the same triad, but then it gets out of whack when you get to the 7. So they made a whole nother convention for the 7, right? And if you're on the Aeolian node, you would think you would be good on all 3 to 7 note Aeolians, adding all the extensions, but it gets messed up with the last one. So you have this extension out here. And with the Dorian, it actually works like you would expect the Aeolian to work. In the minor mode, the Phrygian is going to have the first 2 work out, but then you have to have all these extensions to make the Phrygian work because the second, which is equivalent to the 9, gets messed up, which messes everything up after that. And then the Locrian's a complete mess, which, like the Mixolydian, they kind of made up its own category and then another category to deal with the Locrian. So this would be nice, a useful, but I'd rather name it by basically the modal points would be a more logical or functional way to name it. Now notice as we add the color over here on the example tab, this is the same thing, but I've color coded it now. Notice if I look at this chart on the right, it's actually a little bit nicer because what I'm saying is the ones that are green, these shades of green, are the ones that would be the major chord constructions. Now the problem is the green could represent just the Ionian node, or it could also represent the other major modes, which would be the Mixolydian and the Lydian. But you get an idea, like, and the red then would be the Aeolian node. And then you could see that the purple is representing the Mixolydian node because it's building the chord off of that position. And then you have the yellow is the Locrian modal points, and then the blue are going to be, again, the extensions that are going to be needed. So it's not a perfect color system because, again, you kind of have to go back in here and say, well, what if I was playing something in like the Mixolydian mode? Well, the purple is Mixolydian, or the magenta, but I don't see a magenta for this 3-note chord. That means it must be over here, meaning it would be a major chord, right? And the same idea for like the minors. I don't see the Dorian here. I don't see all the Dorians up top, so that would mean that the Dorians would fit into these two. I should move this category down. The Dorians would, so the color system gives you a little bit better information if this is the only chord chart you have, but it's still not perfect. You'd rather have something like this, which gives you, a color system, or better than that, have a system that's tied out to the nodal points so that you can functionally build your chords off of each of those points. All right, let's go to the blank tab and say, how are we going to add the color? So we're going to start off, we've got our collection of notes on the right, as is the typical starting point. And so I want to add a color system to this. So I want the color after these two. So on my prior presentations, I can go to the right here, and then here's our color system that I want to be adding in there. So I'm just going to go back on over and say, and let's do the latest one first. Let's do this one. I'll pull what I can for this one until I can't pull from this one, and then I'll pull from this one for what I need. So I'm going to say, all right, let's go back on over here, and I'm going to insert. I'm going to put my cursor on the D and go over one column, right click and insert. So we've added 2 columns. Back on over here, and I'm just going to grab the shape column, and then I already had the shape column over here, didn't I? Yeah. So I want to add the color columns, these 2 columns, copy, and then I'm going to paste that over here, and they're off by 1 because I have a 2-side header, and over there I only had 1 header. So I'm going to put my cursor up in these 2 rows. I'm going to insert cells above it, which will push this down. So I'm going to right click and insert and shift cells down, boom. And then I'm going to make this black and white for the header. black and white. So we have that. All right. And then I'm going to try to see, I think this color system right here has conditional formatting. Let's check it. Conditional formatting. It does. So let's see if I can use this conditional formatting. It might get messed up because the conditional formatting uses absolute references sometimes, in which case you can go through here and just do the conditional formatting, which basically are these are the numbers for it. But I'm going to try to format paint this since we did it in a prior presentation, which the presentation was 2335 if you're following along, and I can then color code that, and it doesn't do it. So what's the problem? Let's go up top and say, all right, let's manage the rules. And if I go down to the red one, if I double click on it, it's because this one has it. I reversed the order of the names of the notes, putting the 1 first instead of the A first, which I think is going to be a standard convention going forward. So let me see if I can just remove that. I'm going to adjust this. I'm going to copy the 1 maybe and see if I can copy the 1 or cut it, and then I'm going to put it in front. And then I'm going to put it in front. Boom. Okay. And then apply it. So now it works. So I could do that through all of them, right? I could go through each of these and basically cut this. It gets a little messy because of the way, and then paste it in front, which is hard to do with this giant mouse thing I got. And then I go apply, and then I could do it here. And I'll just repeat that down through so you can see it. Okay, so now these two look like they have the same formatting, but they don't, because this is using an absolute color, meaning I went in here, format painted it, and we made this color, which is that color name. But over here, that's not what happened. Instead, we went to conditional formatting, and if I manage rules, we added all these rules. That means that if I see something that contains a 1 in it or a 1A, I should be able to conditional format it, and it'll give me, if it was a 2, it'll turn red. If it's a 3, it'll turn yellow. I'm going to try to copy the same thing over here. So I have these color system. Let's see if I can just format paint that over here. Boom. And then I have the notes, the number, the abbreviation. Okay. Is that the same over here? The note, the number. I think this is true. So let's take this whole conditional formatting. I'm going to format paint that and bring it over here. Boom. Okay, so this is the same thing where this top one is normally formatted like this, so that we have this color system, and the bottom ones are using a conditional formatting. So if I hit conditional formatting, these are based on rules. So that means if I want to apply the 1 through 7 color system for the relative positions, then I can pull them from here and it should color code them automatically. All right. So the next thing I need is a color system for the half steps over here for my distances. So just a quick recap on the color system. Remember that an A is red, or this orange is going to be an A sharp or B flat, the yellow is B, the yellow green is C, or if I look at it from the Ionian node, any Ionian node for any 7 note collection out of 12 will be this yellow green. So then the green is going to be a C sharp or D flat, and then the D is going to be Dorian, or we'll have an absolute Dorian for any of the 12 note selection, which will be the spring green. Cayenne will be the D sharp or E flat, and then sky blue will be E, or it will be the Phrygian will always be sky blue for any of the 12 collections of 7 note, and then blue will be F, or the Lydian will be blue for any 12 collections of 7 notes. And then the F sharp or G flat will be violet. And then the 11 G will be magenta or Mixolydian, which works out well, the two M's. Mixolydian's magenta will be magenta. And then 12 G sharp will be rose. Okay, so now we've got this color system. So now what I'd like to do is do the color system for the distances. So if I go back on over here, here's my distances. Let's add the modal half steps too. So modal half steps are going to be the steps from each of these 7 note collections. Modal half steps, which I only gave shades of gray because they're not actually permanent distances. It depends where you're starting from because there's going to be a different number of half steps between them. So there's going to be 1 through 6 shades of gray, and I'm going to go counterclockwise using the same shades of gray going that way. So I'm going to go back on over. I need to add 4 columns or so. 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say. Right click and insert. And then I'm just going to make them larger for now. Larger for now. And then go back on over and I'll just grab. I'll grab from the 0 to the skinny, or the O to the skinny. Copy. Go back on over and I'll start after the skinny up here. Paste it. Okay, and then I'll delete this T. Right click and delete that. Bam. Okay. So now we have our shades of gray for the modal half step distances. Now we're going to add these. So I want to add the local distance because I don't have that over here. And then I'll add 1, 2, 3, and then I already have this column. So I'm going to add 3 columns. So I'm going to put between here 3 columns, 1, 2, 3, right click and insert. And then I'll just go back on over and pick up this local range, the hex, and the color. Copy that. Paste that over here. Bam. It's too far up, so I'm going to put my cursor up top, right click, insert, shift it down. Por favor. It didn't do it. Undo. Why didn't you do what I told you to do? Right click, insert, shift it down. There it goes. Okay. So then, all right. So now I have a different color system. So I'm not really worried about going counterclockwise now. I'm just looking at the local distances going clockwise. So if I go 1 half step up, I don't care if you call it a half step or a minor second. It's going to be what I'm going to call flame color. And then if you go 1 step up, if you don't go any step up, it's going to go flame color. You didn't go anywhere. If you go 1 step up, it's going to be amber. I don't care if you call it 1 half step or a minor second. If you go 2 steps up, I don't care if you call it 2 half steps, a whole step, or a major second. It's going to be a chartreuse color. 3 steps up, you can call it a minor third, lime. 4 steps up, traditionally a major third, mint. 5 steps up, perfect fourth, is going to be aqua. 6 steps up, diminished fifth or augmented fourth, electric sky, because you get electrocuted when you go 6 up because it's crazy. And then if you go 7 up, it's going to be azure, which is a perfect fifth. 8, grape. 8, grape. I like the rhyme of that, so I'm gonna get rid of ultraviolet. Just call it 8, grape, which is a minor 6. 9 is going to be orchid, which is major 6, and then 10 is fuchsia, which is minor 7, and 11 is punch, which is a major 7, and then it repeats. So if I go an octave back, we have it a shade darker, but I'm not worried about that too much for my chord construction right now. All right, so now we've got the tools that we need to populate over here, although I need to give a color system here. So let me see if I can grab this colors, because I think these are conditionally formatted. Yes. So let's see if I can just format paint that bad doggy over here. And if the conditional formatting does what we hope it will do, it seems to. So now we've applied conditional formatting, so I can apply that to my colors. So that looks, I think that's working. All right, now we've got all the tools. We just need to apply this out to our colors. There's one other tool that we need here. There's one other thing. Let me see if I can remember. And that's why we need the prior tab, where we broke out the colors for the chords. So for the chords, what we're going to do is we're going to say, name the chords by the nodal point that we're building them off of. And then I'm going to have a color system that goes from light for a 3-note chord to darker for a 7-note chord. So if we're building off the Ionian, that's going to be yellow-green. A 3-note chord is light, and then it gets darker for a 4-note chord, 5-note chord, it's still yellow-green. So we've talked about this in a prior presentation. If it's a Dorian chord, it's going to be spring green, lighter for a 3-note chord, darker for a 4-note chord, darker for a 5, darker for a 6, darker for a 7. And then if we're talking like a Mixolydian chord, it's going to be magenta, light color, and then darker as we get more. So I'm just going to copy this whole system. This is our other color system we're going to need. I'm just going to copy that whole thing. Go to the blank tab over here. And let's put it down here. Boom. Okay, so that's our color system. All right, so if I'm on the Ionian, then we could name the Ionian a C major, and then a 4-note chord is a C major 7, a C major 9, C major 11, and a C major 13, but it doesn't really tell me what point the C is, meaning many of these could be either starting on the Mixolydian point or the Ionian or the Lydian. So I'd rather name it something like this, naming it by node. But whatever the name is, we could put a color system on it that will also give us that information. So I'm gonna put my cursor on these, and I'm just gonna format paint it, and I'll put that up top right here all the way across. So I could just call it a level 1, or let's say a three note. It's going to be a 3 for the notes, spring yellow green chord, meaning, and that's all, that you can name it just by that, right? Now you probably wouldn't name it like that. The colors are going to be useful, but you're probably still going to name it either a C major or a 3-note Ionian or an Ionian 2 modal whole step chord. But you could name it by color. You could say it's a three colored, 3-dimensional colored, or 3 colored, 3 shade of lightness color of a yellow green. And then a 4-note chord is a 4 shade of color yellow green. A 5 chord is a 5 shade of color yellow green. A 6 chord is a 6 shade of color yellow green, and a 7 shade of color yellow green, right? So you could name it just by the color system. Let's do, if I go down to the Lydian, I can say, okay, what is the Lydian? The Lydian is blue, right? So I could take that blue and give me a color, give me shades of blue that are spread out between 3 and 7, as we did before, and just grab that color system, which is this one, and say format paint that right up top for all of these. So the Lydian could be an F major, an F major 7, F major 9, and then we had to add these extensions down here. Let's make this white on the text. We had to make these extensions down here, which kind of throw it off. So these 3 are kind of the same name. That's when we combine this charts together, the major 7 and major 9 are going to be the same, right? This one's an F major versus a C major. But if I just saw just C major, I wouldn't know if it's a Lydian chord or an Ionian chord on the fretboard. That's the point. And so on our chart where we combine these together, like over here, you could see if I combine these together, these 3 are going to be kind of the same for both of them, but then we're going to have to add the extensions for the other major mode down here. Okay, so that's how it's going to, so then let's say the next one is going to be Mixolydian. So we know that's magenta. So I'm going to take magenta and take shades of magenta. So we're going to go down here and say, there's the magenta. We'll copy that, or copy the formatting, and then we'll apply this up top, magenta. Now that one has the same construction for the top one, but then all of the rest of them are different. Again, as you can see on this chart, right? So this one is missing the top one. That's because it's like the major. And then all of the rest had to be pulled over here into its own category because they have a flat 7. Okay, so, but again, I'd rather name it by the magenta node, calling it a 3-note magenta chord or a magenta 2 modal whole step, as we've seen in a prior course or section. So what's the next one is going to be Aeolian. Aeolian, as we know, is red. That's going to be the red one. So I can do shades of red. Shades of red. So here's the red one. I'm just going to copy that. It's the same red, but it's got different lightness factors to it. And I'll just apply this over here. Now you would think that the Aeolian would be good all the way down, but the last one actually needs an extension to it. So if I look at the example, you can see these are good, but then we had the extension over here, which caused a problem, which should be down in the 7 column. So I should fix this. This should be like down here. I think it should actually be ordered like this. Now that this is how I'm gonna, should be actually ordered like that, right? And then, because you have 2 7s down here. But anyway, I think that's right. Is that right? Yeah. So then, but anyways, that's gonna be that one. So, but even the Aeolian, if I use this normal naming convention, I don't know if I'm building from the Aeolian node, the Dorian node, or the Phrygian node. So it would be better to name it by node, right? It's an Aeolian 2 modal whole step, an Aeolian 3 modal whole step, an Aeolian 4 modal whole step, because that tells you exactly where you're measuring from, right? But then if I go to the Dorian, we know that the Dorian is the spring green color. So let's go to the spring green down here. Spring green, grab it, format paint it, pull it up, and say, boom, spring green. So the Dorian, let's make this one white. Why did it do it like that? Let's do this. Let's just do the end bit. It has the white on the dark side of it. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so now the Dorian, again, has the same starting point. Actually, this one's good all the way down. So notice what that means over here on the example. For the Dorian, you don't see that spring green because it fits over here perfectly until the last bit. I think this one is actually spring green. That's the Dorian one, right? Because the Aeolian got pushed over here. So it's kind of too bad that they're both the green. They worked out to both be green because that's a different green. Because, wait, no. Here's the green. That makes sense. That worked out perfect. Because it's over here, the minors, and then you have a different green because the red had to move out here. So you only have one of the Dorian greens here. Why? Because all of the rest of them are subsumed under the main minor, which is the Aeolian. So they're all the same construction except for that last one. Is how you can kind of read that chart if you want to read it with a color code. Gives you a dimension of meaning there. And then the Phrygian. Let's look at the Phrygian. So the Phrygian is sky blue. Sky blue. So we'll pick up sky blue, which is this one. Just the end bit. Format paint it. And then bam. So that had these 3 that were out of whack. So now we're back. So now we're on the Phrygian is a minor mode. It gets out of whack when you get to the 9, which is equivalent to the 2, which has a flat 2. So these 3 are out of whack. So if I look at my chart over here, you can see the extensions for the minor extensions are here, here, and here, right? Because up above, these 2 are the same. They're subsumed by the minor. They're the same construction. And then they had to go over here. And then, okay. So that's going to be the idea. But again, it would be better to just name it. It would be easier to name it by the nodal point. It's a Phrygian 2 modal whole step, a Phrygian 3 modal whole step, Phrygian 4. Therefore, this is just way easier to do. It's from every angle. It's easier to write. It's easier to see. It's easier to understand the convention of how you build it. It's measured better because you're not using scale degrees. You don't need to change the name from which you're naming the thing from. I mean, every conceivable angle is better. And then the Locrian's a complete mess. So the Locrian is yellow. So you can see the Locrian didn't fit into the normal construction at all. So they had to make this whole new kind of thing. It's already yellow, but that's not the right yellow. Let's pick this yellow for the Lokes. So that's going to be the Locrian yellow. Boom. So again, that one, you had to create a whole new category. So you could see it over here on the chart, obviously, because you had 2 categories designated just to, in essence, the Locrian mode. Diminished and half diminished. Okay, but still, it would be easy to just, you wouldn't have to do that. It wouldn't look so crazy. People wouldn't be so intimidated by it if you just called it the same naming convention, but you started the Locrian. A Locrian 2 chord, Locrian 3. This looks intimidating. Like, what is that? Diminished, half diminished. Blah, blah, blah. No, it's just, you just do the same thing. It's a Locrian 3 modal whole step up, right? That would be a lot, that would be less intense. People wouldn't be scared. You're scaring people for no reason. Okay. So then we've got the modal points. So these are the modal points, meaning we're building the chord. We can actually name the modal points. So let's go on over here and say, how can I grab those modal points? So that's a form of point, not distance color, but it's not the point color by note. It's going to be the color by relative position, which are these. But these ones down here are the ones we use conditional formatting on. So I'm going to pull that conditional wait, this is the number, that one, and see if that conditional formatting works over here, which I hope and believe it should. Boom. There we have it. So now we have a color system, and I can name this, what are the notes in a Ionian triad? Well, it's going to be the Ionian, the Phrygian, the Mixolydian, or the 1, 3, 5 from a nodal standpoint. Or you can name it by color. It's going to be yellow, green. It's going to be sky blue and magenta. Those are the modal points. Ionian, Phrygian, Mixolydian nodal points. So in other words, let's color this one too. So I'll color this one too. So I can go over here and say, let's pull the letters and get the same thing by letter. So this is what we have in a Nashville number system kind of, and this is the letter system. But bam. So same thing. So how do you make the triad, the Ionian triad, or a major, right? It would be if it was from the Ionian, Phrygian, Mixolydian. That's what you would hold down. Or again, yellow, green, sky blue, magenta. All right. What about the note? The note half step distance. So these are notes. These are the distance in notes. So now we're looking at distance. So distance is this table in notes. So do I have a distance in notes? I think I named this one. If I hit the drop down and format and look at the rules, I think I named this one with a formula complicated enough that it will apply to all the distances because it's going to take the first letter. So let me see if that's the case. I'm going to grab this. And I'm just going to format paint that over the notes. And I think that's right? Because if it was 0, it was flame, and then 4 away, and then 7 is azure. I think that's right. 2 is magenta. So I think that looks good. And I think that same color system will be able to apply to our intervals. So let's try it. I'm going to pull this same thing and pull it here because of the cool formula I put in it. So there we have it. So a perfect first is that flame color, and then the 4 note away. What color is that one? That's mint, right? For a major third is mint, and then 7 note away is a perfect fifth, which is azure. 11 note away minor 7 is punch. 2 note away major second or major 9 is chartreuse, and then a 5 note away perfect fourth is aqua. 9 note away major 6 is orchid. Okay, and then the modal distance, because the first letter is still the note distance, which is driving the color system, I should be able to do the same color system here by modal distance. So same color system. So now I can name the distance by either interval, or modal distance, or by notes, or by color, right? I could just say that it's going to be, the distances are just flame color, and then this one is just mint, right? And then this one is just azure. Now I know that's a little wonky to say at first, but you can see the fact is that you can name everything by just the colors. That's how detailed the color system is. That doesn't mean that you necessarily have to do that, although I think it would be a good practice to do it because it's just another way to view the thing. But it's just to say that when you apply this color system, it's much more than just like I randomly assigned some colors, right? You'll be able to see the pattern in colors the more you work with the color system that will be static and is actually tied to everything in a much more specific way, right? So what if I do this one by notes? So this is looking at the points not by nodal point, but by note. And this is looking from specifically the key of C. So if I go over here and look at the notes, then those were these ones. So I should be able to grab that and apply that then to the notes. Okay, so then this whole color system is mirrored when I go down to the next one. Now these ones, by the way, are modal half steps. So this is modal half steps and this is scale degrees. So I also should be able to copy that across. So let's do that. Modal half steps is my shades of gray. Shades of gray modal half step. So I can copy that across here for modal half steps. Now it's not working for the 8, 10, and 11 because I only did the shades of gray for the 6 and then it goes around in a circle. So I could adjust it so that if it's an 8, it's going to be equivalent to the shades of gray as a 2, right? But anyway, I don't want to get into that right now. We'll keep it what it is right now. So it's going to be, but I'll apply the shades of gray out, modal half steps. So I'll apply it out here, the shades of gray all the way across. And no, it's not a novel. We're not writing a novel, okay? This is a color system that happens to use gray. People keep trying to use colors and tell me colors mean something weird. No, colors mean what I say they mean. This is what they mean, at least in this context. So then I can just take this whole thing and apply it down here. Boom. And so now this whole thing should be populated similarly. I believe that worked. And I can just copy that whole thing, format paint it, bam. So now we have the same thing for the mix OLED. Okay, and then I can just copy that, format paint it, bam. Same thing for the Aeolin. All right, and then I can just format paint that, and boom. We have it once again for the Dorian. Oh, wait a second. Something weird happened. Undo. I'm going to copy that. I put it on the wrong spot. Yeah, because you messed up. That's what happened. Format paint it. Can't you see? Can't you line it up? Line it up. Undo. You did it again. You did it again. Okay, I'm going to get it this time. I'm going to get it this time. I'll put it in the right spot. Format paint it right there. Bam. That looks right. Okay, and then I format paint it one more time. Or 2 more times. Boom. Okay. Alright. I think that looks good. Let's do it one more time. I think I double clicked for some reason. Got nervous. That's why. Cracking under pressure. Gotta relax. Alright. We're gonna put bam. Locrian. Okay. All right, so that looks good. And then over here, we can apply the same color system for the chords. So for the chords, copy the color thing, and that's the same over here. Boom, major chords are in the major bucket, and then I'll copy the color system over here like this. For the next one, for the Lydian bucket, I'll paste it here, but these two are off. They need to be over here. So I'm going to format paint that over here and then format paint back to normal blue here. So now we've got them over here. And then when you get to the Mixolydian, let's copy the Mixolydian colors. Mixolydian colors. I'll just copy those and say that normally is right there. Bam. But then this one's off, so I'll format paint that over here and format paint this back to blue. So it's like the major, but then it gets its own category over here after the major. And then we're in the minor modes. That's going to be the red, which you would think would be all the way down, but there's one that's off when you get to the 13. Pasting, bam, but this one's off. So format paint, boom, and then format paint to get rid of that. So the Aeolian has its own category, which you would think would go all the way down, but no, it has one that needs an extension out here. And then the Locrian is going all the way down. So the Locrian's the easy one, which is weird because you'd think the Aeolian is the more popular mode than the Dorian. This is the Dorian, not the Dorian. Boom. So no adjustment necessary. Phrygian only has these top two, and then it gets out of whack because the second is a flat second, minor second, or minor 9. So let's format paint that bad doggy. Let's put it down here, and then I'll take this and format paint that over here. So it needs extensions after you add the 9 or the 2, however you want to see it, and then the Locrian has its own two columns because it's a total mess under the current system, which it shouldn't be. It should be really easy. You just name it just like everything else if you name it by the modal point, but they're not doing that currently. So you get these two other columns that totally mess everything up. You mess everything up. Okay, let's fix this one over here. Because I think the Aeolian, I think we're missing the Aeolian. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here, but I want this to come from the Aeolian because I think we're missing this one. So I'm going to put that there, and then I'm going to copy oh, what happened? Okay, I'm going to delete this. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again. Copy, paste, double click. This needs to be adjusted to this one, but going back up and over, I also need to copy that and paste it here. Now I'm not going into detail on this formula because we looked at it before. I just want to add that one, which should be under the 7, which I think I deleted last time to get all of the. So these are all of the chords that you would think if you start from the proper point, from the nodal point, wouldn't land you in the ocean. Meaning you can construct all of these chords from some point in the 7-note collection and not need to add any notes that are in the ocean, which is weird because you have all these things with extensions, which you would think would be like the ocean chords. So how can we color code this? So like the majors, here's the major, and that fits right on the major. Boom. Okay. But then the Lydian, these three are consumed into the major, but these two needed extensions. So that means all I'm going to see on the Lydian color are the extensions that aren't consumed by the major. So that would be right here. And then the other major is the mixed Lydian, but it gets consumed. This one gets consumed under the major, but then because the flat 7 messes it up, it has its own column for everything after that. So you get a lot of magenta on our chart because you needed to make up its own thing for it. Bam. All right. And then the minor, from the minor modes, you would think most of it would be consumed by the Aeolian here. This is where it got messed up because this one's over here. So you would think most of it, the Aeolian would be the driving factor that would consume the other modes for the most part. So it's going to be here, but then this red bit down here is actually an extension for the Aeolian mode, which you would find as a 7-note chord, which is that one. Okay? So then if we look at the other minor modes, you can see the Dorian is going to be consumed almost completely because it fits in the same column. It has the same relative positions, the same intervals, until you get to the 9, which is the 13. So until you build that 7-note chord or add the 13, it's all the same. And it's actually the one that fits in the minor bucket, and the Aeolian is the one that needs the extension, which is weird. So the only green that you're going to see, and that's kind of nice in that it means that the Dorian fits under the same construction almost perfectly, except for that one interval difference, and that interval happens to be the last one that you add from a chord construction, so it's going to be there. Okay, what about the Phrygian? It's not going to fit so well. The Phrygian has the first two fit, but then as soon as you get to the 9, that's the one that's out of whack. So that means these two are going to be consumed by the main major, the Aeolian, but these all need extensions, so they're not going to fit. So I'm going to grab these, and those are going to be the ones that need extensions. Now I'm going to put them over here first because this one got in the way. So I'm going to put these here, format paint to these two, and then this one I'm going to put at the bottom. And that means, and so I'm going to delete this and shift up. Because both of these 13s for the Aeolian and the Phrygian are needing an adjustment, but the Phrygian needs 2 adjustments. So the 7-note chord then for the minor extensions has 2 problems. One for the Aeolian node, which needs a flat 13, and one for the Phrygian, which also needs a flat 13, but it also needs a flat 9. So that's why you have 2 of them there. Okay. And then finally the Locrian, which is so messed up that it's actually easy, is here. We've got this one is like made its own column over here. It's like it's all on its own. And then like these, and then these, we just made another column for the crazy Locrian. So we had to add 2 columns to deal with the crazy Locrian. So there's our color system. So you can see, I hope if you add the color, this chart becomes a lot more comprehensible if you add the meaning of color into it, because now you can start to see these 3 through 7 are going to consume everything if the chord construction is like similar or the same, right? So that means if I'm looking at the major modes, then I'm only going to have the extensions over here on the major side for those things that don't fit under the major modes. So you would think then, if this is the Ionian, then the other major modes are the Mixolydian and the Lydian, and this one actually is the Mixolydian. So the Mixolydian got consumed on this one, and then these 3 had to be broken out into its own column. And then the Lydian got consumed by the major for these 3, and then you could see the blue down here for the Mixolydian means that we have an extension that's different than the major. The minor are going to be these ones. The other 2 minor modes are Dorian and Phrygian. So you can see the Dorian got consumed almost completely, but you see this is the I believe this one is the Dorian down here. So it has actually one that fits in the column, and the Aeolian is the one that got pushed over here, right? And then you've got the Phrygian, which have these 2 consumed for the Phrygian, then it got pulled out here. So it's better, like the color is helpful, but it's not as good as naming the chords nice and simply by the nodal points, as we've discussed before. So I think the takeaway from this is that the nicest way to name your system and the most efficient way, and the way that you can manipulate and change your music as easily as possible, is make it completely transposable, is to name it by relative position, even with the chord names, not putting the notes in the chord names, but telling people what collection of notes that you're in, typically from the standpoint of the major key, even though you could tell them any of the other points. Meaning, if I'm playing in Mixolydian, I can tell people, look, I'm in G Mixolydian. But it would be nicer to say I'm in the collection of notes around the C major, and then the G is the tonic. Why? Because then everybody's going to build their collection. They know where to get the crayon box. The crayon box is in the same shelf. They know how to apply the crayon box to find it. Otherwise, they got to look at different shelves. They got to figure out, they got to do mental gymnastics to figure out the crayon box if you don't have the convention, right? And then once you have that, you can name the chords more easily by modal point, eliminating the notes entirely, allowing you to shift everything that you write through all 12 collections of 7 notes, which you can also name or augment through a color system which is as rich as the naming convention itself. Meaning, you could just eliminate the text and actually tell everything that you need to tell by color. You may not want to do that, right? That might not be the most, but the fact that you can do that means that we're working with something that is as dynamic, as rich in meaning as the actual names themselves, which is going to be useful, right? So the fact that you can see it that way, with that much depth, is way more better than superficially having different colors that keep changing all the time, is what I'm trying to get to.